Meet Ethan and Lucas, both 28. Both hold stable full-time jobs. Both earn $65,000 a year. For years, they lived below their means, skipping pricey vacations, driving cars well past their prime, squeezing every spare dollar into savings. Slowly, painstakingly, each of them saved $50,000. For both of them, it's the biggest financial milestone of their lives. Ethan has always believed real estate is the ultimate wealth-building machine. He likes the idea of owning something tangible, something he can drive past and point to. Lucas thinks differently. He believes the best investment is the one that grows quietly without demanding your time. This isn't a dollar-for-dollar comparison. It's a face-off between two completely different wealth-building philosophies. Let's follow both of them over the next 20 years, because the ending isn't what most people expect. Ethan uses his $50,000 as a 20% down payment on a $250,000 rental property. Nothing flashy, just a well-kept house in a decent neighborhood with strong rental potential. He finances it with a 30-year mortgage at 7%, putting his monthly payment around $1,330. Weeks after closing, he lands a tenant paying $1,800 a month. On paper, it looks incredible. Collect $1,800, pay $1,330, pocket roughly $470 every month. Almost too easy. Lucas takes a completely different route. He takes his $50,000 and drops it straight into a total stock market index fund. No leverage, no tenants, no 2 a.m. maintenance calls. After covering expenses and building an emergency cushion, he has about $200 left each month. So he automates a $200 monthly investment and moves on with his life. There's nothing glamorous about it. No property to show off, no rent check to brag about, just a number quietly ticking upward in an app. On day one, Ethan looks like the obvious winner. He owns a house. He has a tenant. He feels like a real investor. Lucas just has a brokerage account and a confirmation email. But building wealth was never about what feels impressive. It's about what actually compounds. Everything seems to favor Ethan early on. Rent shows up like clockwork. Every mortgage payment chips away at the loan, and he gets a quiet little thrill every time he drives past the property. I own that. Lucas's experience is far less exciting. He checks his account every few months, sometimes up, sometimes down, rarely dramatic. No tenant to thank him, no building to point to, just numbers shifting on a screen. Ethan's friends ask about the rental all the time. Nobody asks Lucas about his index fund. 3 years in, over those 3 years, Ethan collects roughly $64,800 in rent against $47,880 in mortgage payments, nearly $17,000 in profit on paper. That number is a mirage. Property taxes, insurance, routine maintenance, vacancy between tenants, advertising costs, none of it looks huge alone, but together it quietly devours the surplus. Add in his own unpaid time, late-night tenant calls, weekend inspections, coordinating repairs on his lunch break, and that $17,000 shrinks to just a few $1,000s. And his time was never even in the equation. Lucas, meanwhile, keeps stacking $200 a month into his fund. Assuming the long-term market average of about 10% annually, his portfolio has grown to roughly $76,000. No phone calls, no repairs. His money works while he sleeps. But Ethan still holds one massive advantage: leverage. His $250,000 property is now worth $275,000 to $280,000, and every mortgage payment has chipped away at what he owes. His equity sits around $80,000 to $85,000, real wealth, built by controlling a $250,000 asset with only $50,000 of his own money. That's a power stock investing simply can't replicate. The rent check makes property look like free money, but rent isn't profit, it's just the starting line. Every landlord eventually meets the full list of hidden costs. There's vacancy, budget roughly 1 month of empty unit per year, mortgage still due. There's turnover costs, cleaning, paint, repairs, advertising, screening new tenants. There's maintenance, typically 1 to 2% of property value annually. On a $250,000 house, that's $2,500 to $5,000 a year. There are big-ticket repairs, roofs, water heaters, furnaces aren't if, they're when, and one bill can erase months of profit. And there's management, hire it out for 8 to 10% of monthly rent, or pay with your own time instead. Rent minus mortgage was never the real equation. The truth only shows up once every hidden cost is added in. By year 5, Ethan is no longer the wide-eyed first-time landlord. He's a seasoned one. 3 different tenants have come and gone. The roof needed replacing. A plumbing emergency appeared out of nowhere. The unit sat empty more than once. Rent has climbed to about $1,950 a month, but so have taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs. And it's all tallied. Ethan's real cash-on-cash return lands around 3 to 5% solid, but nowhere near the 15 to 20% people casually toss around online. Lucas's story, by contrast, is almost boring. No hot stock picks, no market timing, no panic selling. Just $200 a month on autopilot. By year 7, his portfolio hits roughly $120,000, and something important starts happening. His investment gains now outpace many of his annual contributions. Compounding is shifting into gear. The early years feel unrewarding, then the gains start generating gains of their own, and the curve gets steeper every year after. By year 10, the comparison becomes a photo finish. Ethan's property is now worth $335,000 to $370,000, with his mortgage balance down to about $172,000, leaving him $165,000 to $200,000 in equity. That equity wasn't free. He spent roughly $30,000 over the decade on taxes, insurance, maintenance, and vacancy. Lucas's original $50,000, plus a decade of steady $200 contributions, about $74,000 total invested, has grown to approximately $170,000 to $180,000. Nearly everything above his contributions came from pure market growth. At this point, their net worth is remarkably close. Ethan may even be slightly ahead thanks to leverage, but the numbers don't tell the full story. Ethan got here while carrying hundreds of thousands in debt, with his entire investment tied to one property in one neighborhood, and hundreds of hours of his own labor baked in. Lucas owns tiny slices of thousands of companies across the entire economy, sellable in seconds, and it's asked almost nothing of him beyond one automatic transfer a month. Another 10 years pass. Now we're looking at the full 20-year picture. Ethan's property has kept appreciating, now worth around $500,000, with his mortgage nearly paid off, leaving him roughly $385,000 in equity. Across 2 decades of rental income minus every expense, he's netted about $120,000 in cash flow. Some landlords do better, some do worse. Real estate outcomes depend heavily on your market, your tenants, and how well you manage the property. Lucas has spent 20 years doing almost nothing except staying consistent. His original $50,000, plus $98,000 in total contributions over 2 decades, has compounded at a 10% average annual return to approximately $518,000. More than $420,000 of that came purely from growth. No debt, no tenants, no repair bills. Final tally: Ethan finishes with roughly $505,000. Lucas finishes with roughly $518,000. Two completely different journeys arriving at almost the exact same destination. Ethan built his wealth through leverage. Lucas built his through compounding. Ethan accepted concentration risk. Lucas accepted market volatility. Ethan invested his time alongside his money. Lucas invested his patience. Neither approach is inherently superior, they're just different. It would be easy to conclude the stock market is the obvious choice here. It isn't that simple. Stocks carry real risk too, it's just easier to ignore on a slow, boring chart. Markets crash hard. Broad indexes fell nearly 40% in 2008 and over 30% in just weeks during early 2020. Watching years of savings evaporate almost overnight is genuinely brutal, psychologically. Stocks also don't throw off much monthly income for most people. A $150,000 index portfolio might generate only around $250 a month in dividends, nowhere close to replacing a paycheck. And there's leverage. Lucas turned $50,000 into $50,000 of investments. Ethan turned the same $50,000 into control of a $250,000 asset. When prices rise, that leverage supercharges the gains in a way the stock market simply can't match. So who actually won? Wrong question. Ethan believed real estate was the proven path to wealth. Lucas believed the market would quietly do the work. Both were only half right. The real winner was never about the asset. It was about understanding everything that came bundled with it. Money, the time, the stress, the risk, and the opportunity cost. There's no single perfect investment, only the one that fits your goals, your temperament, and the life you actually want to live. So next time someone insists real estate always beats the stock market, or the other way around, ask them one question. Did you include everything? Because the answer that accounts for everything is the only answer that actually matters.